The quiet revolution you're not supposed to see. Why Black entrepreneurs are rewriting the rules while the system pretends they don't exist. Welcome to Soft Girl Era. The sacred space where strong Black women unlearn survival, rediscover softness, and reclaim the joy, rest, and freedom they deserve without guilt, without apology, and without explanation. I'm your host, LeAnne Dolce, pronounced Dolce, like sweet softness whispered in French, and I'm your guide from burnout to boundaries, from doing to being, from strong to soft, and loving every second of it. Today, I had the privilege of sitting down with Lakesha Knight, a visionary leader who's making the world a better place by championing Black entrepreneurship in Canada. Lakesha's work is transforming how we think about business ownership, community wealth building, and the power of ecosystems that lift us all. Through her insights, we're going to explore something that might surprise you, something that challenges the narrative we've been told about struggle and scarcity. So let me ask you this. What if everything you've been told about Black entrepreneurship, about the barriers, the rejections, the uphill battles, what if that's only half the story? What if buried beneath the headlines of hardship, there's a rising force, a quiet revolution happening right now? One that's rewriting the rules of innovation, wealth, and community power. Here's the truth Lakesha shared with me, and it stopped me in my tracks. While systemic barriers like financing shortages absolutely persist for Black entrepreneurs, many aren't just surviving, they're thriving. They're leveraging community ecosystems and targeted programs to build empires, create jobs, and shift generational wealth. In fact, Black business ownership in Canada is projected to grow from 2.4% to 3.2% of all Canadian business owners by 2034. That might sound like a small number, but let's be clear. That's a 33% increase in representation, and it's happening because Black founders are refusing to let barriers define their destiny. This challenges the narrative of perpetual struggle. It highlights Black entrepreneurs not as victims of a broken system, but as a rising force in innovation and job creation. And here's the thing, this shift isn't happening by accident. It's happening because of intentional programs, strategic partnerships, and a deep well of optimism that refuses to run dry, even when the world keeps saying no. Now, I want to share three key insights from my conversation with Lake Shaw, three truths that can change how you think about your own entrepreneurial journey or how you support the entrepreneurs in your life. First, targeted funding and accelerators are absolute game changers. Programs like the Federal Black Entrepreneurship Program, which has committed $189 million through 2030, and bank initiatives from RBC, CIBC, BMO, and Scotiabank are helping Black founders overcome capital barriers, build credit readiness, and scale ventures in tech, retail, and services. These aren't handouts. They're strategic investments in brilliance that's been overlooked for far too long. When you give a Black founder access to capital and mentorship, you're not just funding a business, you're funding a movement. You're funding generational change. You're funding a future where Black families don't just survive, they build wealth, they create legacies, they own their destinies. Second, community ecosystems drive resilience. Strategic partnerships with universities, incubators, and organizations like the Black Founders Network are fostering mentorship, networking, and local hiring. These ecosystems are turning first generation entrepreneurs into wealth builders for their communities. It's not just about one person making it, it's about creating a ladder that others can climb to. That's the power of collective success. That's what happens when we stop trying to do it all alone and start building together. And third, optimism fuels long term success. Despite higher rejection rates, Black entrepreneurs' confidence, fueled by federal loans, microloans, and peer support, enables pivots like e commerce transitions and global scalability. This optimism isn't naive, it's strategic. It's the kind of hope that says, I know the odds are stacked against me, but I also know my vision is bigger than any barrier. And that mindset creates multiplier effects in economic mobility, not just for the founder, but for entire communities. It ripples out, it touches children who see their parents building something from nothing. It touches neighbors who get hired. It touches the next generation of dreamers who say, if they did it, so can I. Now, let me bring this to life with three stories that Lakesha walked me through. Three stories of Black led success in Canada's entrepreneurship ecosystem. And I want you to listen closely because these aren't just business stories, these are stories about releasing the cape. These are stories about redefining strength. These are stories about protecting peace and building purpose beyond pain. Let's start with Genesis Bioindustries. This is a University of Toronto startup founded by Black entrepreneurs who are developing biodegradable plastics from waste. Think about that for a second. They're taking trash and turning it into treasure, literally solving one of the planet's biggest environmental crises. But here's the thing, they faced early stage funding shortages and the challenge of scaling production for commercialization in a competitive clean tech market. They were brilliant, they had the vision, they had the science, but the doors kept closing. The investors kept saying no. The system kept telling them they weren't ready, they weren't enough, they weren't worth the risk. So, what did they do? They didn't shrink, they didn't give up. They competed in U of T's Desjardins Startup Prize and they won top honors in the early stage category. They used that validation, that one yes in a sea of no's, to reach investors and leverage accelerators for mentorship and networking. The result? They raised 20 million US dollars after their 2018 win. 20 million dollars. They achieved product commercialization. They expanded into global markets. They went from a campus prototype to a global venture, and in the process, they advanced the sustainable materials industry and inspired countless Black entrepreneurs through ecosystem models like the Black Founders Network events. But here's what I want you to hear, they didn't do it by grinding themselves into the ground, they didn't do it by carrying the weight alone. They strategically leveraged ecosystems. They asked for help. They networked. They pivoted. That softness in action and knowing when to lean on community instead of carrying the weight alone. That's what releasing the cape looks like in real life. Now let's talk about transcripts. This is a U of T alumni founded blockchain startup focused on digital identity verification. They pitched in Toronto's Entrepreneurship Week as a late stage company, but they were navigating a male dominated crypto space with systemic biases against Black led tech firms. Securing seed funding felt like climbing Everest in flip flops. Every pitch was met with skepticism. Every room they walked into, they had to prove they belonged. They had to be twice as good to get half as far. You know that story. You've lived that story. But they competed in the Desjardins Startup Prize for non equity cash, gained validation from judges, and networked their way to high profile backers. The outcome? They raised $20 million in seed funding after their 2022 win, backed by investors like Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban, they scaled blockchain tech for secure verification, boosted fintech inclusion, and influenced Canada's SME tech growth. They didn't just build a company, they built a model for Black founders to follow. And here's what I want you to take away from this, they didn't let rejection define them. They used validation from one prize to open doors to bigger opportunities. That's healing in real time, taking the wound of systemic bias and turning it into fuel for innovation. That's what it looks like to protect your peace while still pursuing your purpose. That's what it looks like to say, your no doesn't define my worth. And finally, let's talk about U of T's Black Founders Network cohort from 2025. This program brought together 24 Black entrepreneurs, 58% of them women in Toronto, curating events like the Be Her Summit 2026 for Black women investors and founders. These entrepreneurs face limited access to mentorship and investor networks amid higher lending rejections for Black startups. They were brilliant, they were driven, but the doors weren't opening, the capital wasn't flowing. The system wasn't designed for them. But the program provided a structured accelerator with training, peer communities, and pitch prep tied to the federal Black Entrepreneurship Program and banks like RBC. All 24 completed the program. All 24 gained investor readiness and built ecosystem ties for scaling. They graduated a diverse cohort. They hosted investor summits, advancing AI and venture events. They strengthened inclusive entrepreneurship, projecting that 3.2% Black business ownership growth and community wealth building we talked about earlier. But here's what moves me most about this story: they didn't go it alone. They built together, they supported each other, they created space for joy, rest, and boundaries within the grind. That's embracing softness, that's protecting peace, that's purpose beyond pain. That's what happens when we stop trying to be superwomen and start being strategic, supported, and soft. Lakesha's insights remind us that the superwoman cape, the one that says you have to do it all, be it all, carry it all, that cape is a lie. The truth is, the most successful entrepreneurs, the ones who scale, the ones who build generational wealth, the ones who change the world, they know how to ask for help. They know how to leverage ecosystems. They know how to rest without explanation and pivot without apology. And here's the thing, this isn't just about business. This is about how you show up in your life, how you protect your energy, how you say no without guilt, how you build boundaries that honor your peace, how you turn your pain into purpose, not by grinding harder, but by grounding deeper. This is about recognizing that softness isn't weakness. Softness is wisdom. Softness is strategy. Softness is survival. Because here's what the world doesn't want you to know: your rest is revolutionary, your boundaries are radical. Your softness is a threat to every system that profits from your exhaustion. Every time you say no, you disrupt the narrative that Black women are infinite resources with no limits. Every time you ask for help, you challenge the lie that strength means suffering alone. Every time you choose joy, you reclaim power that was stolen from you. So here's my challenge to you. What one targeted partnership or program will you pursue this week to extend your entrepreneurial runway and build lasting community impact, turning barriers into breakthroughs for yourself and the next generation of Black leaders? Maybe it's reaching out to a local incubator. Maybe it's applying for a grant you've been putting off. Maybe it's joining a network of women who get it, who've been where you are, who can hold space for your dreams. Maybe it's simply giving yourself permission to rest, to soften, to trust that you don't have to do this alone. Because here's what Lakeisha taught me: the future of Black entrepreneurship isn't built on hustle alone. It's built on ecosystems, it's built on optimism, it's built on community, and it's built on the radical belief that softness, rest, and strategic support aren't luxuries, they're necessities. They're the foundation of sustainable success. They're the key to building something that lasts, something that heals, something that transforms. But here's the real question I want to leave you with: are you ready to stop being the exception and start building the ecosystem? Are you ready to stop carrying the weight alone and start leaning into community? Are you ready to stop proving your worth to systems that were never designed to see you and start building your own table, because the revolution isn't coming. It's already here. It's happening in university accelerators and pitch competitions. It's happening in living rooms and coffee shops where Black women are dreaming bigger and building bolder. It's happening every time a founder says, I deserve support. Every time a woman says, I deserve rest. Every time a dreamer says, I deserve to win. And you're part of it, whether you know it or not, whether you feel ready or not. You're part of this quiet revolution. Your dreams matter. Your business matters. Your rest matters. Your boundaries matter. Your softness matters. You matter. So drop the cape, lean into your ecosystem, protect your peace, ask for help, build with others, rest without apology, and watch how your world transforms when you stop surviving and start thriving. Because the world needs what you're building. The world needs your vision, your voice, your brilliance. But more than that, you need you. You need your own softness. You need your own rest. You need your own joy. And you deserve to build a life and a business that honors all of who you are, not just the parts that produce and perform. This is your permission slip. This is your invitation. This is your moment. The ecosystem is waiting. The community is ready. The resources are here. The only question is, are you ready to receive them? Are you ready to release the cape and step into your soft girl era? Not as a retreat from ambition, but as a strategy for sustainable success. Because here's the truth: you don't have to choose between success and softness. You don't have to choose between ambition and rest. You don't have to choose between building wealth and protecting peace. You can have it all, but only if you're willing to build it differently, only if you're willing to ask for help, only if you're willing to lean into community, only if you're willing to be soft, be strategic, and be supported. So go. Take one step this week. Reach out to one person, apply for one program, set one boundary, rest for 1 hour, and watch how that one choice ripples out into transformation, not just for you, but for everyone watching, everyone waiting, everyone hoping that if you can do it, maybe they can too. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing softness. Thank you for believing that your dreams, your business, your life, they're all worth the investment. Now go build the future you deserve, one soft, strategic, supported step at a time.